My name is Lucia, and although I'm now 35 years old, I can't forget the terrifying experience I lived during my last year of high school when I was 18. Back then, I was far from popular at school. My only friend was Andres, who had gotten along with me since our first year. But deep down, I had always wanted to belong to the popular group. From the moment I entered school, that group fascinated me. There were 6 of them, 4 girls and 2 boys, who seemed to have it all: beauty, popularity, intelligence, and money. Even though our school was public, everyone envied them. I had always wanted to be part of their circle, but as an ordinary girl, I knew it was nearly impossible. By my senior year, I had resigned myself to never joining the popular crowd. However, one day, everything changed. While Andres and I were having breakfast in the school cafeteria, one of the popular girls approached us. My eyes widened in disbelief when I saw her standing in front of me. Her name was Valentina, and she had jet black hair and almost translucent pale skin. Valentina greeted me and asked if we could talk in private. I glanced at Andres, who nodded. Even though I had never told him about my dream of joining that group, he knew from the way I looked at them whenever they walked down the halls. I sat across from Valentina at another table and asked what was going on. As she sat so close to me, I felt an inexplicably eerie vibe, as if I were in a horror movie. But I brushed it off as nerves. Valentina explained that one of her friends was moving away and switching schools. Since they were used to being a group of 6, they wanted to know if I'd join them for recess the next day. She assured me they thought I was very kind and wanted to be friends. I couldn't believe it. It was incredible that they had noticed me, so I immediately agreed. Valentina smiled, but her smile didn't seem genuine. When I smiled back, she left. After that unexpected conversation, I was overwhelmed with emotions. I couldn't wait to share the news with Andres, expecting his support and excitement. But his reaction was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of being happy for me, Andres looked disappointed and gave me a half-hearted smile. He warned me not to get too close to those people, explaining that he'd heard disturbing rumors about the popular group. Some said they were part of a cult or something similar, which would explain their seemingly endless money despite coming from average-income families. Andres told me that on weekends, the group frequented the city's best clubs, wore designer clothes, dined at high-end restaurants, and spent money recklessly. He suspected they might be involved in illegal or shady activities, as their lifestyle didn't make sense for teenagers like us. Though part of me knew he had a point, I pretended not to care and changed the subject. It was hard to accept that something dark might lurk behind the group I had admired for so long. Andres just rolled his eyes and dropped the matter, though he still seemed worried about me. Despite Andres' warnings, I couldn't contain my excitement about spending time with the popular crowd. I convinced myself that this was my chance to change my life and finally belong to the world I'd always dreamed of. Yet, I couldn't shake the strange feeling I'd had around Valentina or Andres' words. Still, I decided to go ahead with the invitation, telling myself the rumors were probably just misunderstandings. But deep down, a voice warned me to stay alert. That afternoon, I kept replaying in my mind what it would be like to join the popular group. But doubts crept in. What if they realized I wasn't as wealthy, brilliant, or amazing as they were? What if they rejected me? After an internal debate, I decided to give them a chance, trusting there was a reason they'd chosen me. Another worry gnawed at me, the thought of leaving Andres behind. It hurt to think our friendship might suffer, but I felt this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That night, I barely slept, too excited about sitting with them at recess the next day. As dawn approached, I finally fell into a deep sleep, only to be met with a bizarre and unsettling dream. In it, Valentina, dressed entirely in black, stood before me in a dark, shadowy place. She gripped my hand firmly, used a cutter to slice her palm and then mine, letting blood drip. Then, she joined our hands in a blood pact, smiling the same insincere smile she'd given me the day before. An ominous, oppressive atmosphere surrounded us, fueling my growing unease. I woke up terrified and unsettled, but I dismissed the dream as a product of overthinking. Still, a lingering sense of dread stayed with me as I got ready for school. My mind kept wondering if the dream had a hidden meaning. At school, I was a bundle of nerves and anticipation, my heart pounding as I scanned the halls for the popular group. Every time I spotted them, the image of Valentina from my dream resurfaced, sending a chill down my spine. Meanwhile, Andres seemed distant and worried, as if sensing something was off. Though I tried to reassure him, I felt an invisible barrier growing between us. Despite my doubts, I convinced myself to stick to my plan and ignore the warnings piling up in my mind. The day dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity as I waited for recess. My thoughts swung between excitement, fear, and guilt over Andres. As the time approached, the tension in my chest grew, and my breathing became shallow. Finally, recess arrived. A mix of anxiety and eagerness filled me as I headed to the cafeteria. From afar, I saw the popular group sitting at a table, as if waiting for me. Valentina spotted me and waved me over. Despite her friendly gesture, an irrational fear began to take hold of me. With my heart racing, I walked toward them. But with each step, the fear intensified, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. It was as if an invisible, dark force was warning me of impending danger. My steps grew heavier, and the path to the table seemed to stretch endlessly, as if my fate kept slipping further away. When I reached the table, the atmosphere around them felt strange and oppressive. The noise of the cafeteria faded, replaced by an eerie silence that hung over us like a black cloud. The sunlight streaming through the windows dimmed, as if consumed by shadows swirling around the group. I sat down cautiously, trying to hide my rising fear. The others stared at me with enigmatic expressions, as if they knew something I didn't. Their faces, once lively and cheerful, now looked oddly pale and hollow, as if something essential were missing. Valentina began speaking, but her voice sounded distorted and distant, as if coming from another world. Her words mingled with incomprehensible whispers that seemed to emerge from nowhere, making me increasingly uneasy. As the conversation continued, I realized the others were speaking in an unfamiliar, sinister language, their twisted words filling me with terror. The objects around us began to warp, as if manipulated by unseen forces. The chairs twisted and groaned like living things trapped in a nightmare. The shadows on the walls shifted and grew, taking on grotesque, menacing shapes that watched me with malice. Despite my fear, I tried to keep my composure and follow the conversation. But every word I spoke seemed to feed the darkness around us. I felt trapped in a spiral of terror, sinking deeper into an abyss with each passing moment. Everything began spinning around me, and I grew dizzy and disoriented. My vision blurred, and the distorted voices of my new friends echoed in my head like distant whispers. The oppressive atmosphere intensified, and I felt on the verge of losing control. Suddenly, one of the boys clapped loudly in front of me while staring intently. Instantly, my dizziness vanished, and everything returned to normal. For a moment, I wondered if the juice I'd drunk had been expired or something, since I'd experienced such a strange and unsettling sensation. Everyone at the table acted as if nothing had happened and continued chatting casually. They talked about fashion, Valentina's new dress, and their weekend plans, mentioning an incredible party and a trip to the woods to see the full moon. I felt uneasy when they all turned to look at me in unison, as if they'd rehearsed the move. Smiling, they invited me to join them at the party and the woods, assuring me it would be fun. Though unsure, I accepted, pushing my worries aside. However, as I studied them closely, I noticed their faces looked gaunt and worn, as if something had drained their vitality. Their eyes, once bright and lively, now held a strange malevolence. Still, I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. The conversation continued, but my mind kept wandering, haunted by the strange sensations and the unsettling appearances of my new friends. Deep down, I couldn't help wondering if I was making the right choice by joining them, especially after Andres' warnings and my nightmare. As we spoke, the atmosphere grew heavier, as if an invisible darkness were closing in. The shadows in the cafeteria seemed to move and expand, alive and eager to consume us. By the end of recess, the laughter and smiles of my new friends took on a macabre, disturbing tone. Their cackles echoed in my head like ghostly voices, leaving me with a deep-rooted sense of dread. When recess ended, I said goodbye to my new friends, who headed to their classes. Their smiles didn't seem genuine, and something about them unsettled me. Catching my reflection in a window, I noticed my own smile lacked its usual warmth and joy. I found Andres and told him everything, how I'd felt dizzy and terrified for no reason, and how everything had suddenly returned to normal. He listened carefully, his expression growing more concerned. Andres suggested someone might have spiked my drink, given how strange everything had been. He urged me not to go with the popular group on Saturday, arguing it was a bad idea. He pointed out how quickly things were moving and how it made no sense for them to choose me when there were so many other girls at school. Though his words stung, I knew he was right. Yet, my desire to stay in that circle and experience life as one of them was so strong that I ignored his warnings. I convinced myself my fears were unfounded and that everything would be fine if I just relaxed and enjoyed the experience. As the week progressed, I grew more distant from Andres and closer to the popular group. We laughed and joked in the halls, but an undercurrent of unease lingered. At night, I struggled to sleep, plagued by nightmares of Valentina and the others transforming into monstrous beings that chased me, slowly devouring my soul. On Friday night, before the weekend of the party and the woods, I decided to talk to Andres one last time. I wanted to apologize for pushing him away and share my fears, hoping for his support. We met at a cafe near our homes, and I was shocked to see how exhausted and drained he looked. Had my distance affected him so much? Guilt and regret washed over me. I told him about my nightmares and the constant discomfort I felt around the popular group. Andres listened intently, his face filled with worry and sadness. After a long silence, he urged me to think carefully before going with them and to leave immediately if I felt unsafe. I nodded, thanking him for his concern and promising to consider his words. We parted ways, but my unease only grew. That night, I went to bed early, hoping to rest before the big weekend. Instead, I was plunged into horrifying nightmares. In my dream, I stood in a dark, grim place, surrounded by a deathly silence. The air reeked of decay, as if death itself had taken over. Dim candles cast a sickly light over a strange altar covered in Sumerian symbols and arcane markings. As I approached, I saw the altar was drenched in fresh blood, dripping onto the floor. At its center lay a large book with pages that looked like human skin and ink like dried blood. The symbols hypnotized me, compelling me to read them aloud. As I recited the words, terror consumed me. The candles burned with a blue flame, and the shadows twisted into grotesque shapes. I felt the presence of ancient, malevolent entities watching from the darkness, waiting to strike. Then, the popular group appeared before me, dressed in black robes and wearing masks that hid their gaunt faces. They chanted in a guttural, sinister tone, holding ritual objects covered in blood and arcane symbols. I realized I'd been lured into a witchcraft ritual, my soul offered as tribute to unspeakable entities. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My screams died in my throat as the group continued their ritual. A dark, malignant energy swirled around us, trapping me in a vortex of horror. I felt the darkness invade my being, devouring my soul and leaving me empty. I woke up drenched in sweat, trembling, the nightmare still vivid in my mind. Despite the horrifying dream, I brushed it off as my imagination running wild. I told myself there was nothing to worry about and decided to go to the party with my new friends, and maybe even the woods. But I promised myself I'd turn to Andres if anything went wrong. At 8 p.m., I arrived at the party with the popular group. The place was full of wealthy people, but something about their eyes unnerved me. Still, I ignored it and focused on having fun. I drank more than I should have, enjoyed myself, and even felt relieved, thinking I'd overreacted. At midnight, I told my friends I had to leave, but they insisted I join them in the woods. Under the influence of alcohol and the excitement, I agreed. When we arrived, I was shocked to see an altar identical to the one in my dream. My friends asked me to hold their hands, forming a circle around it. They began chanting in an ancient, unknown language as black candles burned around us. The wind howled, and the air grew heavier. Suddenly, I realized I'd walked into a witch's coven, just like in my nightmare. Terrified, I broke free and ran. One of the boys caught up to me, telling me not to be foolish. He said if I wanted money, beauty, and power, I had to join their group of witches. He admitted the devil had appeared in one of the girls' dreams and told them I was the one they needed. That's why they'd sought me out. Fear sobered me up, and I ran like never before. Luckily, a woman driving by saw me and offered me a ride home. I could barely speak, and when I got home, I broke down crying. My parents comforted me, and my mother slept beside me that night to make sure I was safe. The next day, I went to Andre's house and told him everything. He took me to a healer near his home, who cleansed my energy and promised those witches would never come near me again. Though the experience was terrifying, it taught me a valuable lesson about listening to my friends and my intuition. I realized appearances can be deceiving, and beauty, money, and power aren't everything. Most importantly, I learned to value true friendships and stay true to myself, no matter what. From that moment on, I focused on building genuine relationships and trusting my instincts.